having me in your office as a law clerk. I have learned more in this brief time with you here in Del Rio yesterday and today than in 15 years in Congress. You can make plenty of trips to the border, but you never learn more than you will actually being in the courtroom, working with your wonderful staff, with the marshals, the Border Patrol, and seeing what you deal with on a daily basis.
Well, thank you for coming. I don't think anybody else from Congress has ever done this before.
Thank you. It's a real eye-opener to help me understand the scale of the problem and also some very specific solutions that, working with you and your staff, we've come up with some legislative fixes that are going to make a real difference in securing the border. First of all, I think it's important for people to know that level of casework that you handle. The average district court in the United States will handle about 400 civil and criminal cases per year in total. And last year alone, how many criminal cases did you handle?
I handled actually about 1,400 criminal defendants plus the civil cases.
On top of that civil. So the workload is much higher here in Del Rio, and that's due to your own initiative and your leadership and the terrific staff that you've put together. The expedited processing you have done through your software program, Rambo, that allows you to handle the casework, paperwork so much more quickly than other courts as well. But your personal initiative, it's important for people to realize that Judge Moses is responsible for the fact that in Del Rio, if you are apprehended in the Del Rio sector, you will be prosecuted. Tell us about the prosecution rate in Del Rio versus other sectors.
I think what we did here in Del Rio in terms of the courts is we do not want to be used as an excuse of why cases are not brought into court. If the agents are arresting these folks and we have the capacity to handle them, then the courts will handle them. That's not going to be an excuse. I kept hearing everybody saying the judges don't want these cases, they can't handle these cases. That was not going to be an excuse that could be used in Del Rio. The one unique feature of Del Rio that makes this work is the fact that everybody works together. The marshals, with Border Patrol, with HSI, with probation, with our court staff, with everybody. Everybody just works together and we are able to handle everything.
You're the only federal district court judge here. You've got how many magistrates?
I have 2 magistrate judges.
And you've literally handled almost 4 times the caseload of other district courts around the country and done it in a way that makes the people crossing the border illegally, it's nearly 100% prosecution rate in the Del Rio sector.
That's my understanding with talking to the chief of the Border Patrol sector.
Border Patrol will release people for humanitarian reasons.
Correct.
If it's an illness or somebody that's just obviously not amenable to prosecution in a particularly sad case, they'll release them for humanitarian reasons, juveniles, but otherwise the prosecution rate in Del Rio, if you enter the United States illegally, is nearly 100%.
That's correct. That was the whole initiative Streamline in 2005.
Judge Moses came up with Operation Streamline, which the idea was to enforce the law.
Well, actually, it was the idea of former Border Patrol Sector Chief Paul Berg that then went into practice after he left.
And I recall you telling me several years ago that some of the U.S. attorneys were going home early. They weren't doing their job. They weren't following through on all their cases. And the Sector Chief at the time, you said, came to you and said, we can do this. We can handle the paperwork. We can handle the caseload. We can enforce the law and secure this sector of the United States-Mexico border, and you did it.
And that was Chief Berg.
And that was Chief Berg with you and your staff.
Correct.
So I'm here in Del Rio today to figure out how we can spread Operation Streamline up and down the entire southern border, beginning with Texas. And as chairman of the subcommittee for Commerce, Justice, Science, I have responsibility for all federal law enforcement, and I've already developed several legislative ideas with your help and the help of your staff that we can implement Operation Streamline beginning in Texas and move towards a prosecution rate of 100% for anyone entering the United States illegally. And obviously for those bringing drugs and guns, what happens to people that are in your courtroom illegally smuggling guns or drugs or coming here to hurt U.S. citizens?
Those are all felony cases, and they're not even considered Streamline cases. They are just charged as felony drug cases, felony gun running cases, or smuggling cases.
That's important for people to realize when we talk about the 100% prosecution rate. We're talking about economic migrants coming here to work. They are all prosecuted in Del Rio. Those that come here to hurt U.S. citizens, smuggling drugs, guns, etc., that's a felony case, and they're handled very severely in your court.
Correct. We're not talking about the drug possessors, the people on the street corner with a baggie. We're talking about people that are bringing in, that are trafficking in drugs.
Right. Judge, you've made several good suggestions about hitting these people in the pocketbook, the human smugglers, the slavers that are bringing in these poor people, exploiting them, dumping them in the desert and leaving them with nowhere to go. They don't know where they are. we've come up, talk a little bit about some of the legislative ideas that we're gonna work on together.
Well, one of the problems that we have in terms of the folks that are, the smugglers that are taking advantage of the economic aliens is that they charge them a lot of money. If they get caught, if they get prosecuted, if the defendant doesn't agree, I cannot have restitution or ask them to make restitution to these illegal aliens. That is something that we need to fix because there's too much of a profit margin and the sentence is too small, so it's worth their time to smuggle aliens and basically hurt them if they decide they're about to get caught.
As I heard this morning, I sat in as a volunteer law clerk in Judge Garcia's courtroom this morning and heard about 22 economic migrants who are being prosecuted for entering the United States illegally. And it breaks your heart. You hear these people have family that's ill at home, they're coming here to work, there's no work at home, they're poverty stricken. I can understand if you've got a sick child, how desperate you'd be to help that child, but they broke the law, they entered the country illegally. They're paying anywhere between $5,000 to $7,000, sometimes $10,000 to be smuggled into the United States, and the smuggler gets away scot-free, dumps them in the desert, and this poor person is not only out all that money, they've been captured, they're going to be sent to prison for 10 days to up to 6 months, and so they're out the money, they're out the time, and they often, some of these people say they've worked anywhere between 6 to a year and a half or 2 years to earn that money to be smuggled into the United States. So you're suggesting we need to hit these human smugglers in the pocketbook and force them to pay restitution to these people that they've smuggled into the country.
Basically repay them, because right now, even if you had caught the smuggler under the law as it exists right now, I can't order them to make restitution even for the money they collected from the economic aliens.
Because it's all about the money, and this will be a serious disincentive. If we can you can hit the smugglers in the pocketbook. As long as the law is enforced, the result is safe schools, safe streets, good schools, a strong economy, and then that allows free and honest and legal trade to go back and forth between Mexico and Texas.
Correct.
Maybe you can talk about that a little bit, how important that is for Del Rio and Laredo.
Basically, we do need to have the ability to go back and forth between these two cities, Del Rio and Acuña, for us, and have trade. Our city and our economy thrives on it, and so does Acuña. The problem is that we're being overloaded by these smugglers who are coming to the border area to basically continue with their trade of drugs, aliens, guns, money, whatever they can get into to earn some money.
And tremendous amounts of money are involved.
Tremendous amounts of money.
All of the defendants in the courtroom this morning, about 22 economic migrants who were captured by Border Patrol and being prosecuted and sentenced for anywhere between 10 days to 6 months in jail, all said that they had to pay money to the Zetas, that in order to enter the United States, they paid money in Guatemala, Honduras, or in Mexico. They paid to cross the river, and then they were dumped in the United States and left out in the middle of the desert.
And many of them, even if they get taken to Houston or Dallas or Atlanta, they still have to pay another quota once they get to those areas. They can't get out of the custody, so to speak, of the smugglers until the family comes up with more money.
It is heartbreaking because you hear these terrible stories. I know it's upsetting. You know, they want to come here to work, and certainly we need the workers, but you got to do it legally. And it never occurred to them to do it legally. Talk a little bit about that and what we can do to help encourage people to enter the United States legally.
Well, honestly, the administrative side of the house, if people want to come in legally, it's a very difficult process. It takes many years. And if you're desperate for money, your family is starving, somebody is sick, you don't have 30 years to wait for a visa. We need to somehow simplify the administrative side of the immigration process so they can come in legally, and we can also ameliorate the problem.
And at the same time, by enforcing the law with zero tolerance and ensuring that if you come to the United States illegally, you will be prosecuted, and make it easier to come in legally, nature will take its course.
And there are a lot of these economic aliens that would like to come in legally into the United States. They just cannot wait that long for the visas.
And we in Texas are happy to have the work and the trade with Mexico, glad to have the workers, but come here legally to do it, follow the law, and be a good neighbor and a good citizen. If you want to become an American, God bless you, we'd love to have you, but don't go on welfare, don't go on public assistance, and become a contributing, tax-paying member of society. Learn English and become an American, celebrate your culture and your heritage. But become an American, that works for everybody. It's worked for America from our first days.
And there are a lot of good people that are coming in that are getting caught as economic aliens. They're very good people. However, they come in illegally.
I can say everyone that was in the courtroom this morning that I saw, a lot of young people, all of them were coming here to work. And your heart does break for them because they're trying to send money home to their family. They're in desperate poverty, escaping violence at home, but you don't want to do it illegally. And there's ways we can fix this together to make sure it's easier to come here legally.
Hopefully so.
And I'm looking forward to working with you.
Same
Thank
here.
you very much, Judge, for having me.
My pleasure.
I was here under an assumed name for the last day and a half, as your law clerk, because I didn't want the Department of Justice or anybody else to know I was here, because now I got a true picture of what's actually going on, how I can best help you.
And I hope that we all impressed you with our work as well.
Spectacular.
Good.
We are very fortunate to have you. Thank you.
Oh, well,
And
thank
God bless
you.
you. Thank
Thank
you
you.
for your work to protect the people of the United States.
My pleasure.
Thank you, ma'am.